Hello everybody, welcome to Mixed Martial Arts, where we discuss fight breakdowns, recaps, and comics. Today we're going to be talking about the fights from last night, Derrik Lewis versus Chris Daukas in the UFC, and of course, Tyron Woodley versus Jake Paul too. First we'll start with the UFC card, and we'll start with a couple of highlights from earlier on in the card. It began with Jordan Leavitt getting this interesting submission win over Matt Sales. We also had Raquel Pennington having a featherweight bout, which is interesting. She's a former bantamweight title contender against Amanda Nunes, and she looked good in this fight. She's on a 3-fight winning streak now. She got the submission victory, and she's very much a player at bantamweight or especially featherweight now, where there's not too much going on. Perhaps she'll get another shot at Nunes in the future. We'll see what happens there. We also had Sijara Eubanks on the card. She actually missed weight for this flyweight bout, but she lost by TKO. So Gatto got a pretty nice front snap kick KO to the body in this one, which was cool to see. Gerald Meerschaert also had a fight on this card. He had a nice rear naked choke submission in this one. He's quietly built up a 3-fight winning streak since his loss to Khamzat Chimaev last year. That was a KO loss, so gotta give props to Gerald Meerschaert. He's looked great since then, and gotta give him credit for that. And then the main card opened up with this incredible matchup between Cub Swanson and Darren Elkins. Gotta love those fights where you get two veterans of the game fighting each other. And Darren Elkins and Cub Swanson have just been mainstays in the featherweight division for years and years. So this was a really cool fight. And Darren Elkins is not easy to finish, but Cub Swanson got it done. He looked loose in there. He was extremely comfortable. He dropped Darren Elkins multiple times. And there has been a trend I've noticed in the UFC with a few fighters that are veterans and they're turning back the clock and starting to give some more vintage performances like in their prime. For example, Dominic Cruz did it last week at UFC 269. Glover Teixeira did it, of course, at 267. He's already in his 40s and he won the belt off of Jan Blachowicz on that card, which is just awesome. So Cub Swanson did that on this card as well with this KO of Darren Elkins. He looked incredible. He got this spinning hook and kick KO, and it was pretty cool to see. So now I would actually like to see Cub Swanson get a fight against a ranked opponent again, because neither of Cub Swanson or Elkins were ranked for this fight. But if Cub Swanson got another ranked opponent, that would be really interesting, and it would be cool to see what he can do at this point in his career against some of those ranked guys. Then the next fight, we had Diego Ferreira. He lost this one due to injury, which was unfortunate. But then it was on to the bantamweight division, the hottest division in the UFC, if you ask me. It feels like we get an incredible matchup in this division every week. I mean, the guys in this division are willing to fight anyone. They don't care about the rankings. And in this one, we had Hafeila Sansa versus Ricky Simone. Simone he's been doing very well lately, and he got a KO over Hafeila Sansa in this one. So Sansa, now he's coming off 2 knockouts in a row. But with Ricky Simone, you got to be interested in what he can do. Maybe he'll probably get an opponent ranked even higher next. And the bantamweight division is just fascinating right now. You got so many incredible fighters, tons of former champions. So I'm very excited to see what Ricky Simone can do in this division in the future. The next fight was Angela Hill versus Amanda Lemos. This was a very close fight, but Lemos did get the controversial split decision victory. And in the co-main event, we had a really interesting matchup between Stephen Wonderboy Thompson and Belal Muhammad. Wonderboy, of course, has the better striking out of the two, and he was looking good early on. He was landing some good strikes, he was looking comfortable, but Belal Muhammad did what he needed to do. I mean, the octagon is smaller than the Apex where this fight took place. Who knows if that had a role in it? But regardless, Belal Muhammad got Wonderboy down repeatedly, and every time he did a great job of keeping Wonderboy there. He took a page out of Gilbert Burns' book, if you ask me. He really followed the blueprint that Gilbert Burns laid out in the fight with Wonderboy at UFC 264, which was also a loss for Wonderboy. So definitely got to give Belal Muhammad credit for it. He did a great job of keeping Wonderboy on the ground, which not a lot of people have been able to do to Wonderboy. So Belal Muhammad is in the top 5 of the welterweight division now because Wonderboy was the number 5 contender in this fight, so you gotta think Belal Muhammad will be in the top 5 now. He definitely looks like a skilled fighter, but The matchups now are going to be very tough for him. You got Vicente Luque ahead of him. You got Leon Edwards, Colby Covington, Gilbert Burns. And of course the champion, Kamaru Usman. He called out Usman after the fight. Highly doubt he's going to get that fight, but you never know. Stranger things have happened. So we'll see what happens next for Bilal Muhammad. He definitely looks like a promising fighter. What he did to Wonderboy was very impressive, but the matchups ahead are going to be very difficult if you ask me. And as for Wonderboy, he just signed a new deal with the UFC. He was actually considering going back to kickboxing. He mentioned that publicly after his contract was up. This would have been the last fight on his contract, but he decided to stay with the UFC. He signed a new multi-fight deal. So we'll see if he can be one of the fighters that can turn back the clock and start looking great as well. Cub Swanson did it earlier in the card. I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on Wonderboy to see if he can do that as well. And in the main event, we had Derek Lewis versus Chris Daukas. Chris Daukas is the younger guy. He was riding a 4-fight winning streak coming into this fight. But Derek Lewis, he just looked great. He threw some high kicks, which is always crazy to see from him. And he did get the KO over Chris Daukas in the first round. It was a really fun fight. This was a great bounce back performance from Derek Lewis after his loss against Cyril Gane in the interim title fight. And that was a great performance by Derek Lewis, showing that he's still one of the top 3 heavyweights in the world, or top 4 if you include the champion, Francis Ngannou. So it was an awesome scene, just like it always is with Derek Lewis. He did that trademark celebration, and he even took his cup off in the octagon and threw it into the crowd, and somebody went to catch it. I don't know why somebody would want that, but it's never a dull moment with Derek Lewis. And he'll definitely be keeping a close eye on the title fight coming up between Cyril Gane and Francis Ngannou, which is an incredible matchup. And, Derek Lewis still hasn't fought some of the top guys in the division, like Stipe. And the Francis Ngannou fight was a weird one. That rematch is still looming out there, and Derek Lewis definitely has a shot at becoming the champion in his career. But then we get on to Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley 2. These are some clips from the first fight. It was a close fight, but Tyron Woodley did have that, nearly a knockdown against Jake Paul, knocked him into the ropes in the first fight. But then coming into this second fight, Jake Paul continued on with his great promotion. He had this MVP belt that somebody on his team designed for him. So he's still doing a great job at keeping people interested. The first fight was close. I thought Jake Paul won. Woodley did have a few good moments, and he did in the second fight as well. But this time, it was Jake Paul who got the win over Tyron Woodley again. This time, he's the one that hurt Tyron Woodley. Jake Paul got cut earlier on in this fight. The fight went late, though. He showed off his cardio. He showed that he can deal with adversity after that cut. One of the interesting moments was actually when Woodley took Jake Paul down. Jake Paul got close to Woodley, and Woodley actually picked him up and threw him on the ground like it was an MMA fight. It's just hardwired into his brain, I guess. But like you can see here, Jake Paul did get the KO win. It was quite shocking, actually, to see Tyron Woodley get KO'd in such a way. Even in the UFC, this didn't happen to Tyron Woodley. I know he had that one knockout loss in Strikeforce, but even when he did lose in the UFC, he wasn't KO'd like this. So Jake Paul, he might not be the best boxer in the world. I'm not expecting to see him walk around with the WBC belt anytime soon. I don't think he's going to be a champion in boxing, but he definitely has skills, and he's doing a great job at picking his opponents wisely and getting wins over big names. It's really interesting to see what he's doing, actually. He only has a couple of fights in boxing, but he's undefeated. He obviously has good skills and really big knockout power. But one thing that I like to think about is whether he's taking tougher fights than most other boxers, because in boxing, they like to pad their records early on. The managers usually help their fighters build up a good record, pick their opponents wisely so that they can eventually become a championship fighter, which is different than an MMA where you're getting tough fights from the start when you get into the UFC. So a lot of boxers, they'll start off their career fighting people who are 0-10, 0-20, really bad records like that. And although the opponents with those 0-10 records have been boxing for a lot longer than people like Tyron Woodley, for example, Woodley is a championship fighter. He was the UFC champion. It's no joke to beat him, even in a boxing match. So good on Jake Paul for continuing to get these wins. And he's giving opportunities to lesser-known fighters who deserve it, like Amanda Serrano. who got a win in the co-main event of that card as well. So Jake Paul is doing some good things for boxing, and we'll see where he goes from here. Maybe he'll go back to that Tommy Fury fight, or perhaps Nate Diaz. Jake Paul, he could want to take a break after this. He hinted at that after his first fight with Woodley. Maybe, perhaps Nate Diaz will be out of his UFC contract by then. He's expressed interest in fighting Jake Paul, so it'll be interesting to see what happens from here. But let me know in the comments section what your favorite fight from last night was. Are you a fan of Jake Paul being a boxer now? And which UFC performance impressed you the most last night? Let me know in the comments. Follow the link in the description to my Twitter page and follow me on there for more updates from Mixed Martial Arts. And if you want to see more fight recaps like this, then hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.